Have you ever heard a story that begins with something as simple as rain, but ends up changing lives forever? If you're watching this, stay with me until the end, because what happened on that stormy evening will remind you of the power of kindness, love, and fate itself. And trust me, by the time you hear what happened when she heard that knock on the door, you'll never forget this story. So let's begin. The rain was pouring mercilessly that evening, the kind that made streets glisten with silver streams and turned every corner into a lonely, shivering place. Daniel, a single father in his mid-30s, hurriedly carried groceries from the back of his old pickup truck, balancing bags in one hand while the other firmly gripped his 7-year-old daughter Emma's small hand. Daniel's life had been a struggle since his wife passed away 3 years ago, leaving him not only broken-hearted but also with the full responsibility of raising their daughter. He worked long hours as a mechanic, barely making enough to keep food on the table, yet he carried himself with quiet strength. Emma was his world, his light, and though exhaustion weighed on him, he never let her see his pain. That evening, as the storm worsened, Daniel saw something unusual through the curtain of rain. At first, it looked like a figure stumbling along the side of the road, weighed down by something heavy. He squinted, water dripping from his cap, and realized it was a woman in military fatigues, drenched from head to toe, clutching a duffel bag and clearly shivering from the cold. She looked lost, exhausted, and fragile despite the strength her uniform suggested. Without hesitation, Daniel turned to Emma, told her to wait in the truck, and jogged across the rain-slicked street. "Hey, are you all right?" he shouted over the roar of rain. The woman looked up, strands of wet hair plastered to her pale face. Her eyes, tired but sharp, met his, and she gave a weak nod. I just need somewhere to stay until the rain passes," she said softly, her voice trembling not just from the cold but from something deeper, something broken inside. Without thinking twice, Daniel extended his hand. "Come on, you'll get sick out here. My house is just around the corner." She hesitated, her soldier's pride making her reluctant to accept help, but the rain was merciless and her body screamed for rest. Finally, she nodded and followed him, her boots sloshing in the mud. When they reached his small home, Daniel quickly brought her inside, handing her a towel and offering her the warmth of their fireplace. Emma peeked out from behind her father's leg, her curious eyes widening at the sight of the uniformed stranger. "Are you a hero?" Emma asked innocently, breaking the heavy silence. The woman managed a faint smile, though her eyes glistened with unspoken pain. "Something like that," she whispered. Her name was Sarah, a soldier recently returned from deployment, though to her, returned didn't mean much. She had nowhere to go. No family waiting, no home to call her own. The war had taken everything from her, friends, comrades, and the sense of belonging she once had. Now, all she had was a duffel bag of worn clothes and memories she wished she could forget. Daniel made her a cup of tea, his rough hands surprisingly gentle as he set it in front of her. She thanked him quietly, her eyes darting around his modest home, the worn furniture, the small but warm atmosphere. It was the kind of home she once dreamed of having, before the military became her entire life. Emma, curious and innocent, began asking her questions, what the army was like, whether she'd been scared, if she'd ever seen the stars from faraway places. Sarah answered as best she could, masking the horrors with simple truths a child could understand. As the night deepened, Daniel found himself drawn to Sarah's quiet strength, but also the sadness she carried. He recognized it, the same hollow ache he carried since losing his wife. Pain had a way of finding pain, and in that unspoken connection, something gentle sparked between them. The storm outside raged on, but inside that little house, warmth grew. Sarah offered to leave once the rain stopped, but Emma clung to her hand and begged, "Please stay, just for tonight." Sarah's heart melted, and against her own instincts, she agreed. That night, as Daniel tucked Emma into bed, Sarah stood silently by the door, watching the father-daughter bond with longing in her eyes. She had never known that kind of love, that kind of safety. For once, she felt at home. Hours later, when the house had gone quiet, Daniel found Sarah sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. She finally opened up, telling him pieces of her story, how she had lost her unit in an ambush, how survivor's guilt haunted her every waking moment, and how coming home didn't feel like coming home at all. Daniel listened quietly, offering no judgment, only understanding. When she faltered, he simply said, "You're not alone anymore." Those words broke something inside her, but in the best way. For the first time in a long time, Sarah let herself cry. And Daniel, without hesitation, was there to catch the pieces. Days turned into weeks. What began as one night of shelter turned into Sarah helping around the house, cooking meals, fixing things, even walking Emma to school. Slowly, laughter returned to Daniel's home. Emma adored Sarah, and Daniel found himself smiling more than he had in years. Yet, beneath the fragile happiness, Sarah carried fear. She knew this couldn't last. She wasn't meant for normal life. She was a soldier broken by war, unworthy of the warmth she'd found in Daniel's home. But just as she began to think she should leave, something happened that changed everything. It was a quiet evening. The storm had long passed, leaving the world fresh and calm. Daniel and Sarah sat on the porch, watching Emma chase fireflies in the yard. For the first time, Sarah felt hope, like maybe she could belong here. And then, there was a knock at the door. A knock that would change her life forever. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and unexpected. Sarah froze, her heart pounding. Daniel rose to his feet, confusion etched across his face. Emma stopped playing, her small voice asking, "Daddy, who is it?" Sarah's chest tightened, her soldier's instinct screaming that this knock was not ordinary. She knew, deep down, that her past had finally found her. Who could it be? An old comrade? A messenger? Or worse, someone bringing news she wasn't ready to face? The knock came again, louder this time, sending shivers down her spine. And in that moment, she realized, this was no coincidence. This was fate, standing at the door, waiting to decide the rest of her life. But what ended with that mysterious knock on the door? Well, hold on to your heart, because what happened next would change not only Sarah's life but Daniel's and little Emma's too. The knock came again, sharp, demanding, and Sarah felt her throat tighten. Memories of battlefield doors being kicked down, of late-night orders, of comrades who never returned, all of it flashed before her eyes in that split second. Daniel glanced at her, reading the fear on her face. "It's okay," he whispered, though even he wasn't sure what waited on the other side. He opened the door slowly, the old hinges creaking, and standing there was a man in a dark coat, holding an envelope with the official seal of the United States Army. His expression was grim, his eyes carrying the weight of things too heavy to say out loud. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. She knew this wasn't a neighbor, and it wasn't a friend. This was official. This was her past, catching up to her. "Sergeant Sarah Collins?" the man asked, his voice steady, almost mechanical. Sarah stepped forward, her hands trembling as she confirmed her identity. He handed her the envelope without a word, saluted sharply, and turned away, disappearing into the night as quickly as he had arrived. The knock had left behind silence so thick it pressed on everyone in the room. Daniel closed the door slowly, his eyes locked on Sarah as she stared at the envelope like it was a bomb ready to go off. Emma tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "What is it, Miss Sarah?" But Sarah couldn't.